Welcome to the Master Slave Lifestyle Podcast. Here we'll interview real people living the real Master Slave lifestyle, all consensual and all in different ways. And in this episode,
when your history is that, and then you are actually being submissive sexually to someone and providing a service to someone, and particularly if they are a person that is not of color, that can really play with your mind about how you feel about yourself, how you look about yourself.
This is masterslavelifestyle.com.
Hello everyone, so today I want to welcome Boi David. David's been a submissive for 8 years and is also the Vice President of the International Leather Association. David, welcome.
Hello, how are you doing today?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a very busy Saturday, so I'm very happy to be here.
So would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, so my name is David. My scene name is Boi David. Sometimes I go by Boi Chet, depending on who I talk to. But I've been in the scene for about at least since I would say about 2014, 2013, somewhere in between there. My journey into leather is probably something that's unique, but at the same time, it's something that I think a lot of people go through. Particularly being a person of color and identifies as Black, African American. It's been a journey of mine, particularly one of identity and finding out who I am and who I want to be. But going back into just introducing myself, I lived all over the world. Actually was born overseas in Europe, and then lived in Texas, Maryland, North Carolina, Georgia. So I saw a lot of diversity. And then I came to Georgia, and my parents retired here in Georgia, which means I retired in Georgia. So I've been here for at least since about 2002, off and on.
So thank you for that. So what I'd like to do is go through your journey step by step. So the first thing I'd like to kind of ask is, so how did you first figure out that you were a submissive?
You kind of put the pieces together, you start to look at different things, particularly I would say in my case, since I'm an older millennial, like movies. I remember one of my early memories was watching Police Academy, and there's a scene where the police somehow get up to this gay bar. There's a leather bar, and it's called the Blue Oyster. And I remember looking at that being like, oh, that place is kind of cool. There have been also other things where just within, growing up gay, you start looking at Tom of Finland, you start looking at different sorts of artwork. Once again, another notable scene is, at least with me, is with what's that movie? Pulp Fiction. There's a scene with the Gimp, and I was like, that dude looks like he's having fun. That's kind of not necessarily what happens to Ving Rhames in the movie, because I think that's egregious, but just the guy when he was kept in a trunk, and they bring out the trunk, and it sounds like the Gimp, it just comes out. I thought that was kind of hot. There's other things that you just go through as just through your journey. You start, I would say most of it has been artwork. And then when you actually start to, have sexual activity, and you start to actually, want to, do things sexually, you start to figure out that things don't work. Like you feel weird being on the top end, or you liked when someone was aggressive, or you liked when someone was verbal. I think one of the really big times that I kind of realized something was different is, remember back in the day before Grindr and Scruff and all those other places, there were like chat and phone lines. Well, there was a guy that I had met just on the phone, but he was very verbal, very aggressive. He was telling me to do things. And to this day, it is one of the best orgasms I have ever had in my whole entire life. Like, I remember it. So, you start to put these things together, and then you really want to kind of have that sort of experience. So the way that I've always described my experience of coming into my submissiveness is like, you put your toe in the water, and then you're like, no, I don't like it. And then you put your foot in the water, and it's like, no, I don't like it. And then you put your ankle, and then you just kind of go back and forth, back and forth. And I think one day when I came out a third time to my parents, that's a whole nother story. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to jump in. So I jumped in and I never looked back. And that's kind of where I came into my submissiveness.
So, like a lot of people, it sounds like you had a number of coming outs as well. So, did you have, let's say, a coming out for being gay, but also a coming out for being a submissive?
Yes. So I came out to my parents 3 times. I won't go into the thesis of that, but that was 3 times. And then I would probably say there was a official coming out. I think I won't say it was official as it was like the big coming out to my parents, because I've already kind of dabbled in and out again into this leather world, talking to people who are dominant and other people who are submissive, slowly buying leather over a period of time. I think people kind of already knew. I think if there's anything, it's when I become Mr. Atlanta Eagle 2019. That was the official, like, he's in it to win it. He's fully embracing this. And I think that was probably my official coming out into leather, even though I had already been in it for like, a couple of years.
And that's an amazing coming out.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, well done. So kind of going back a bit. So I can imagine that you had these feelings. So from seeing, let's say, the GIMP or these other kind of thoughts and feelings, did you have an additional struggle with these because you're a person of color or a black man? Which do you prefer me to call you by in the way?
I don't really care if it's African American, person of color, or black. So you don't have to worry about that. But it was a difficult struggle. Like I said, America has a lot of history with real actual slavery, over 200 years with it, particularly with people of color, black African Americans that were taken from Africa to America. And so there's a lot of history that goes into that. And when your history is that, and then you are actually being submissive sexually to someone and providing a service to someone, and particularly if they are a person that is not of color, that can really play with your mind about how you feel about yourself, how you look about yourself. You start to feel as if, there might be a certain issue with you. And I'm not saying that there isn't an issue, which is another thing that we can get into. But you really start to contemplate, is there something wrong with me that's added on to this already other thing of like, oh, you like to be flogged. Oh, you like to be whipped. Oh, you like to be spanked. You like to be doing stuff forcibly. All these things that are done to your body. So it can be a little bit, I think, I don't want to use the word traumatic, but you contemplate a lot about who you are. Is this right? How do people look at you? There's a lot of, as being a black man, there's this sort of bravado that you're supposed to have, this sort of swag that you're supposed to have as a black man. And once again, particularly being in the South. And if you don't have it, or if you are not have that sort of swagger, you can kind of, once again, contemplate about who you are. And if hasn't been any sort of representation before, it can get, and you don't see it, you can look once at yourself as shameful, as bad, and as someone who is traumatized by something, when it's not necessarily the case. So I think it's a little different for people not of color, because they don't necessarily have the history that comes along, once again, being in the South and being a person of color. So yeah.
I mean, would you be happy to share some of those thoughts and feelings? And the reason why I ask is I wonder if there's other people who are in a similar position to you, like a few years ago now, and I wonder if you could share a bit more, you could help them.
This may not necessarily be a popular opinion, but I would definitely say, get therapy. Therapy has helped a lot.
And
There,
when you did that therapy, did you have it with a person of color, or was it with a white person?
so yeah, I researched this person. So my therapist was sexually open. Well, no, I don't want to say sexually open. What's the word I want to use? Sex positive. Was sex positive. Was gay. Knows about a whole bunch of gay issues. Knew a lot about uh, like the BDSM community. So it wasn't necessarily a person of color that I was looking for. It was more of a person who would be able to help me along this journey that already had the experience. Now, if it was a person of color that already had that, then that would have been a plus, but it was not necessarily something that I was looking at. Um, and when, my therapist is great. And so I would say, like, just once again, look at therapy simply for the fact that, and at least to the fact that not with me, but there are people who do engage in activity that is not necessarily helpful for them, and it actually could be harmful depending on who you are. It is I want to be very clear, it is a very, very nuanced situation, right? What is right for me not necessarily be right for someone else, right? And we're talking about some stuff, at least within American wise, in American standards, it's not considered legal. So I always preface this by saying this, that your situation of who you are is different, and that you need to get that help from a therapist in order to figure out if it's the right thing for you to do at the same time. I have people who do feel shameful about being Black or being a person of color, and then they engage in this activity because of that. And I'm not saying that, BDSM is bad, because I don't believe that whatsoever. All I'm saying is that situations are very, very nuanced, and that these particular actions and these particular thoughts pertain to you and you only. And I cannot tell you if you're right or wrong. Only you can tell if you're right or wrong based on your experience and your nuances and the nuances within yourself. So I would say get a therapist. The other thing I would say is find people you trust. Really, really go through the paces, interview people, talk to other submissives um, that are going through there. They don't necessarily have to be a person of color, but I would say, talk to people, really search that out, find out what people are doing, if they're safe. And once again, just like it is on your side, on the other side, they could be engaging in these sort of activities because they feel certain ways about you and themselves, right? And so I would just say, don't be scared, but be cautious. Just be cautious, and realize that those things are different. I think that's what makes the difference between a Black submissive and a non-person of color submissive, is that they don't necessarily have to think about these things that are coming about. They don't have the detriment as they do with a person that with a non-person of color. So yeah, I would say find people that you trust, and then I would say at the end of the day, like, really find out what you want to do. Like, if you're into medical play, like, really find someone who's into medical play as well. One of the best stories I've ever had as a submissive is I was at Southeast Black and Blue here in Atlanta, and there was a guy teaching sounding. He was like, "Does anybody want to get sounded?" And I said, "If there's anybody that should sound me for the first time, it's this person that has been doing it for 15 years. And I said, you know what? There's like 50 people in the room, but you know what? Fuck it. I'll get sounded." And I think that was the thing. Like, you have to find people who are there, who know what they're doing, and do the research, and make sure that you're in a safe environment. I really do think that that's really important.
Thank you. I mean, one of the big... No, I want to say two things. So, the one is that, I would also recommend a therapy. I've done it on and off for years, and at the moment, I'm kind of been doing therapy for 4 years after I broke up with my master. And it's been an amazing journey of growth. And actually, when I finish with him, I think I'm going to pick up doing some Jungian therapy, as I think it's going to help me with my next thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I would also say that therapy is very good, and it is something I would recommend when people feel that it would be helpful to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think going back to your story, one of the things that I really get this feeling of is kind of going on a path to find your true, authentic self and power.
Mm-hmm.
That is what kind of came up for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering whether you could share some of those kind of steps on this path to power, on this
Yeah.
path to your authentic self.
Yeah. Once again, I think it's really finding out the things that you like and the things that you don't like, first of all, right? I do think porn has been tremendously helpful. It's a visual aspect. You like to see it. I think that's helped a lot. And then I also think about like, well, if you're looking for my individual steps, I think the first thing is once again finding out what you like, what you don't like, um, and then finding someone that you trust, and then particularly for me within my particular circumstance, I started buying leather clothes. Like the vest was my first one. I started buying boots. I started going to small, I won't say events, but gatherings. There used to be a leather club here in Atlanta called the Panther. So I would go there. I would also go to Onyx Night, certain places like that, talking to people, trying to figure out who amongst in the leather community to talk to, going to certain events, having conversations with people in leather or who at least dabbled in leather. And then, as any other millennial, I went to the apps. Recon is uh, a popular app that I've been on for years. Scruff has also been there as well. And then, I stepped it up. I started going to bigger events. I started going to IML. I started going to MAL. I went to Southeast Black and Blue, which is a small local event here in Atlanta. I went to Southeast Leatherfest. So places like that where it's like I slowly started, once again, putting more parts of my body into the pool so that way I can get used to it and acclimate it to it. Because I will tell you, like, when I went to Southeast Black and Blue for the first time, it really freaked me out because there were people getting whipped. There was people who were using rope in a particular way, and it freaked me out. And if I were to go to someplace bigger, like let's just say MAL or IML or Folsom or something like that, I think I wouldn't have had the best experience that I can have because it would have been so overwhelming for me and daunting that I probably would have taken more years off in the leather community or in my growth because it would have just been so overwhelming. So for me, it was just once again this like taking those small baby steps to actually becoming to my full fledged self, and that's been my personal journey for me.
And how about, let's say, your pathway to a submissive? So you must have had, let's say, issues about, well, is this right for me? What's going on because of what you said about the historical kind of context. So what were some of the things that made you go, no, this is my natural self and this
Yeah.
is okay?
Yeah. So I personally, once again, a lot of it came through porn or back in the day, magazines, when we actually had to go buy a magazine. It came a lot through that. And then the representation that I saw, at least with Black men within the porn community, was top and aggressive. So I tried doing that. And then as I did it, it just felt so awkward. I felt like a fish out of water. Um, it just felt awkward. And then once again, looking at all the videos and all I liked and how and what I identified with, I start to see more of the submissive side of wanting to do these things and visually getting turned on by someone servicing someone or someone being the bottom. And then I think what really turned me on was a person that I had sex with, and they were aggressive, they were dominant, they were older. And I remember being in that moment and being like, this is how I want to have sex. Like, I remember like being pushed up against the wall. I remember being spanked and being like, how come I cannot have sex like this all the freaking time? Like, how come I
Yes.
cannot have that? And then once again, stepping it up, going into recon again, and then finding people who have like high cow or who are consider themselves dominant, and reaching out to them, playing with them, and really saying like, oh yeah, like this is what I want. Like, this is what I want to experience. This is what I want to do. And so, once again, it's just those baby steps that I took in order to really come to fruition of who I am as a submissive.
So you had these, let's say, empowering kind of moments. And was it because they empowered you so much, or that they fulfilled you so much that you were able to say that I shouldn't be feeling shame about this, and you could let go of I'm using the word shame, but that might not be the right word. Letting go of the things that were holding you back.
Right. I will say this. It's with the word shame. You still feel some sort of doubt. I won't say shame, but there's definitely doubt there of, should I be doing this? Should I be having sex this way? But you know, having these sorts of activities and this sort of play, it really kind of embraced me, like where my mind was like blown, like, oh, you can have sex this way, oh, you can do this, right? And it's I don't want it to seem like it was like one big moment where it's like, okay, I'm a submissive now, because I think even now sometimes, as I am Mr. Atlanta Eagle, that they're still kind of like, oh, I don't know. But I do think that there are those moments in my life where it's like, yes, this is what I want. Like, yes, I don't mind like not having standing privileges or furniture privileges, or I need to be in a certain protocol. Like, I don't mind those at all. For me, it's always it's a journey that you're always kind of finding these things about yourself, and really pushing the limits, but at the same time respecting them within yourself, in order to find out like what your true authentic self is.
So what I'm hearing here is that there's a lot of experimentation and reflection,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
really listening to all of your parts.
Yeah, exactly. 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 I will give you an example. I think a lot of times when people think about submissive, they also think about maybe someone who has, how do I say this? What's the PC word of it? Way to say this. I would say that will like to have multiple partners in a night. And I tried, I can't do it. Like, I cannot do it. And it's just one of those things where the thought of it is great, but my body will physically not allow me to do it. And I haven't decided why that is just yet. I just know my body won't do it. And so for me, I think it's always a journey. Once again, it's that journey again, where you're trying to figure out those, like, what kind of submissive you are, I guess in a way, to yourself. You're always constantly thinking and contemplating. I think that's a little bit. I'm always constantly thinking and contemplating about who I am as a submissive. But yeah, that's the best example I can kind of give you.
And if I actually ask you that question now, how would you respond to it? Who are you?
Oh, if I were to say it now, I would say I'm an uncolored Black submissive looking for a dominant to serve, and looking for training and discipline. That's probably who I would say I am. Um, yeah.
And who do you want to become?
I would love to become. Oh, that's such a good question, because I feel like there's so many layers to that. If we're just talking about leather, I mean, I would love to become a person, an ambassador to leather for individuals outside of the community. I always found that very intriguing, talking about people's experiences, particularly when I'm wearing this vest. People will start to ask me questions, straight people, of course. Um, and there's a lot of, I don't know, I've always had the talent of making people feel comfortable in conversations and them talking about certain things that they wouldn't necessarily talk about with anybody. I think that's just part of me being a military brat and being around different diverse groups where I can pick up on things. Um, and so when I'm talking about things and people are asking me, like, how do I get my boyfriend to choke me? Or, I want my boyfriend to spank me harder, but he's scared, like those sort of things. I find that very intriguing. Um, and I do see myself as being an ambassador. I do also see myself being a very strong submissive to and providing a service and being a partner to whoever I am going to be with for a long term period. So I do see that within myself and becoming that person.
Thank you. The other word that came to my mind as you were speaking was someone that enables other people
Mm-hmm.
to kind of explore different parts of their sexuality, or to also
Yeah.
find their authentic self
Yeah.
as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I will tell you, this vest that I'm currently wearing right now, Mr. Atlanta Eagle vest, people ask me about it and then they start to ask me questions about, like uh, medical play, which I'm not really into, but they start asking me about that. They ask me about sounding, choking. They start asking me about spanking, flogging, and I'm just like, lady, I don't know you. Like I don't know you, but you're asking me these questions, and I'm more than welcome to go in there. But like, you don't know me from Adam, so you know, um, it's one of those things that I think if we were to talk about more and to realize that a lot more people do these sorts of activities, I think it would become less taboo, and then we wouldn't necessarily have to worry about injury, abuse, and violence that unfortunately sometimes comes along with this. So yeah.
Hello everyone, this is Slave Phil here. I wanted to get in touch to let you know that we're launching a new Master Slave Lifestyle community, and this is where people can come together to discuss the 24/7 lifestyle. This includes people who are curious about 24/7, those looking for a 24/7 relationship, and those who are already in a 24/7 relationship and want a supportive community to be there for them. This community is going to be there for all of you. You'll be able to access this through a new membership tier on the Patreon membership, and this is going to be on special offer throughout December and January for only €2. So please go to mastersslavelifestyle.com/community or check out the show notes to find out more information. Now back to Boi David. I suppose that links back to the boundaries which you were talking about before as well. Know what your boundaries are, or have stronger boundaries that are closer to you until you know what it is you really want.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of touches a little bit more about, and I know a lot of people have questions about this, so I'll go ahead and answer. I could go in that direction, but especially being a Black submissive, people always ask me about the race play issue, about that sort of activity that comes along as being a person of color within the BDSM community. And I think for me, when it comes to boundaries, you really have to figure out exactly what you want, right? I ran this by my therapist, and I remember him saying, I remember asking him, where is the line? Like, where is the line for me as a person dabbling in BDSM, having these sorts of activities and playing with a person that's not of color? Like, where is the line of that? And what I really discovered is that, once again, it's nuanced, right? There are certain things and certain actions that I will not participate in, but someone else might go a little bit further than that with their given consent, right? And there's nothing I can do about that, because that's two people in consent doing the things that they want to do, that they have agreed upon. And I think for me, once again, finding out those exact things that I like and what I'm looking for, and consenting to those, that is just for me. When it comes down for race play, it's such a it's such a loaded topic, because I think about seeing you can see it on my face. I think about this constantly, right? If you're having two people who are engaging in that sort of play, and I'm talking not the I'm black, you're white sort of play. I'm talking the actual derogatory names and that sort of thing. Those are two people who have consented and agreed to that. But at the same time, I'm also thinking in my head, if I consented and agreed to that, or if you consented and agreed to that, is this something that you're doing because that you want to do it? Or is this something that you're doing because you're experiencing some sort of, maybe you had an event or trauma, or you feel bad about yourself in this particular way, so you're expressing this in this sort of way, which I don't necessarily feel is the healthiest, because it comes from a place of shame, it comes from a place of doubt, it comes from a place of fear. So I don't necessarily think that's the healthiest thing for you to engage in that activity. But sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes what it is that, oh, this will make my mom upset, so I'm just going to engage in this. Or nobody knows that I'm going to do this, so it turns me on because I'm in this way. I will tell you, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for this. I know there are certain people who are civil rights fighters that engage in this sort of activity. So for me, it's like, where is that constant balance? But I think it's very, very nuanced. You just can't say that you have this particular issue just because you engage in this particular activity. It could just be like, I'm doing this and no one knows about it, right? It can just be something that is just taboo, and it's because it's taboo, it turns you on. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad or that you're coming from a place of trauma or anything. But at the same time, you could, but you have to figure that out for yourself. And so that's the whole thing that like always goes in my head as a submissive, particularly with like on my journey. It's like, if I'm engaging with someone who's not of color, am I doing this because I feel bad about myself? That is kind of something that is a reoccurring theme throughout my whole submissiveness. I won't say now, but definitely within the beginning. And so, there's this whole thing about that comes along with that. And I think it's a layered topic. I could write a whole college thesis on it. But at the same time, at the end of the day, it's two people consenting to a particular activity and agreeing to it. And it's within those two people. So there's really nothing that you can do at the end of the day, because they are consenting and agreeing to it.
Yeah, it's been, because I do sometimes have people ask me about this through the website as well, and I haven't really been able to help them, because it's like, I can't answer this. I don't know enough. So thank you for kind of giving some of this, because I think this does allow people, be it kind of black or white or another kind of minority group, to kind of hear this and understand how they might want to engage with it if this is a fetish of theirs.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I know if you just want to flip it in the reverse, like have a dominant black man and a submissive white man, I know that there's some people there's some submissives that love being submissive to black men because they feel the guilt that comes along with everything that's been within American history. And so they want to express it in that particular way. But at the same time, is that healthy? Is that not healthy? But that depends on you, particularly within that individual. You know what I mean? Because your experiences are something that's completely different. And even though I don't feel like it's on the same level, it is kind of parallel to that, right? But yeah, it can be very conflicting within your head about like all these thoughts and feelings that are in your head, and you always go back and forth. Not now, once again, not now, but definitely in the beginning of when I was coming into this journey.
It also reminds me of something else. So I actually had an Australian slave email me recently, and we had a nice conversation about it through email, and it was the word faggot. And because he'd read on my website how I really dislike this word, and yet he loved it, but his master struggles to use it. So we were then exploring it, and one of the things I suddenly realized, it's like, I think it depends on how it's received, because humiliation can be a way that brings out and empowers the slave or submissive self. But the important word is it empowers. And if a word or a term, and I'll use the word faggot, kind of makes you feel bad, and it really makes me feel bad, then it doesn't empower you. You close up,
Right. Right.
But for some people, a term can just be the key that unlocks this amazing submission that comes out. But for others, it can have a lot of cruelty and a lot of stuff associated with it. So I think the two people need to figure that out and then kind of go, does this work? Because you're trying to empower each other.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I had had a potential master that I was going to be in service of. And I don't mind the word faggot in that particular context. I will say in the BDSM context. But he had an issue with it because he is of an older generation. I think he's a boomer. And so when I asked him if it was okay to use the word, he was like, no, I don't feel comfortable using the word, because that his generation has a whole different experience with the word. So, I mean, I have a shirt that says faggot on it. So I don't have a problem with that. But once again, it's nuanced. It's every...
I think it shows how different we can all be with how we can unlock ourselves.
Yes, exactly.
And it means that we need to allow the right term to be used with the right person, but also to understand that it might not be the term for us, Right. And for me, I think because I was bullied so much at school, especially using that word, it doesn't work. Whereas I can see, and I've seen it used with other people, and it has this amazing effect on them. Right. So there is this kind of like, as you said, I think it's exploring through, let's say, the fetish or the desire, and then having a mutual consent with both people that works for them.
Right.
And
it's really one of those things, and this is something I learned on my journey, that every person is different, everybody is different, and your expectations of one person based on your experiences in the past, you have to hold it as yourself, but you cannot put that on the other person, because they are a totally different person with totally different experiences. They may want something else. They may want more of a boyfriend experience with a little bit of mix of BDSM, or someone might want the total, domination feel in between the two. So it just kind of depends on who you are.
I mean, coming back to you, because you mentioned being collared. So have you been collared before, and what does that mean for you?
Yeah. So a collaring is very, very serious to me. What I'm starting to realize, I what I'm coming to realize is the next person will be collared to will most likely be the person that I will marry in the traditional sense. We'll put it that way. So my first collaring was, I'll be honest with you, I don't think it was a real collaring. I think they ended up doing it for me because they knew I liked this sort of play, and they went along with it. And then the more that we started to get into it, the more I realized, like, oh, the dynamic is actually backwards. Like, I may be receiving bottomly, I may be the bottom receiving, but the dynamic is actually backwards, and it's more reliant on me than I am servicing or relying on him to lead the way. So that was a new experience. And then the other collaring I had was actually right before the pandemic started. And then I realized within that I'm very, at least at that moment, I was very eager to get that collar on my neck. And then what I started to realize, I was like, oh, this may not necessarily be the best choice for me. And I say that simply for the fact because when I'm in, I'm in. There's no holding back. There's no hesitation. Like, I'm in, I'm in. When I feel it and I know it, like, there's no going back for me. So in some ways, I won't say the pandemic was a blessing, but it did halt some stuff to where it was like, oh, this may not necessarily be the best thing for me and for you at the same time. And I mean you as the dominant at the same time. So that was because we were getting ready to have a ceremony and everything. We had made a list. We were inviting people on a certain day to have this collaring, and then certain instances, certain things and events happen leading up to that where it was like, oh, this may not necessarily be the best thing for both of us. So that was at least the last formal attempt at a collar. So yeah, that those are my two instances of being collared and almost being collared.
And what was your learning from, let's say, those two that you could share with other potential new people who are excited about being collared?
I don't do wishy-washy, and I can't do insecurity. I can't do it. I come from a family where my parents have been married for almost 40 years now. And it's a very strong bond in a unit because of trust and lack of insecurity. So for me, I need to have someone who's assertive and knows what they want and tells me what they want. I can't do wishy-washy. I can't do, I can't do it. I can't do it. And so if you are doing things to get me, I think that's a bad sign. Like I want to be with you, but I'm doing this to be with you, as in, like, these are not the things that I want, but I'm doing it for you. It's like, I don't feel like, I don't say it's bad, but it's very concerning. Also, if you cannot talk to me as an individual and you have to get your friend to talk to me as a dominant, especially as a dominant, oh, that's a turn off. So it's very much of a, I need to know from a partner, I need to have the assertiveness. I won't say aggressiveness, but assertiveness. And I need to not have someone who's wishy-washy. I can't have that. And those are not the two, respectful of the two people who I was collared to and was going to get collared to. Those are just, I'm just saying, those are the things that I've realized within that experience.
I can really relate to that, because I think some of my first collarings were people that in the end I could have topped. That I was suddenly very much in charge of sorting things out in the end, right. And I had to do a lot of reflection to realize. I called it a master with a capital M, but I like this idea of the assertiveness, or using the kinky circle of consent. It's also someone that wants to take, right? Things which I've consented to, things that I have allowed, but they do have this thing that they want to take as well, and that is what makes it partly the master. For me, master-slave relationship,
Yeah, I will tell you now. We're bringing it back. I remember this experience. it was New Year's Eve. I don't remember. I think it was like 2015, 2016. And there was another guy that I had met, and I kind of find him a little bit attractive. And we started talking and all this other stuff. And he looks at me and he goes, you know what? I'm going to take you out to dinner. Be at this restaurant at this particular place and wear something nice. I said, whoa. Like, to me, like, that was so, like, sexy. Like, his attractiveness went through the roof because he did that. And he said that. And so, like, then that was kind of one of the things that, once again, it was like, I need someone that's like that. Like, I need someone who's like, this is what I want. This is what I want to do. And then I can decide if, the way that I describe it is I can decide if I want to get on the train or not. Right. Like, I can decide if this is for me or not. And so I think that's something that's very, very attractive when it's like, no, this is what's going to happen. And yeah, like that's just a story that I always like telling people about my journey.
It's a lovely example of almost true power. You know, that
Mm-hmm.
there are people that think to be powerful, you need to make someone small, you know, but often power is just saying, I want this. And then the other person allowing it, you know, and
no, I totally agree. Like, it's it was just one of those things like, oh, wow, I was not expecting that. And like, when I tell you, like, his attractiveness went through the roof, it was just like, oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
so, with you define yourself as a submissive, and for instance, I define myself as a slave. And I've become very aware that we can put these titles on each other and then actually mean the same thing. And what I'd be really interested to hear is, what does a submissive mean to you, and why did you choose that title?
So submissive to me, is anything that is not dominant. So for in my head, there's dominant and submissive, and I'm not saying that there's people who are in the gray area that can switch or not, but for me, like, I don't feel like, if someone were to ask me to top, or someone were to ask me to act a particular way as in a dominant way, it would be very, very hard for me. It would be like an actor, like acting in a particular role. Like, it would not seem natural to me. And then also my submissiveness, depending on who I'm with, fluctuates. So there have been times where I am a boy, where I am submissive in the way, but I will put my 2 cents in to let you know, like, how I feel or whatnot. Almost kind of like a cadet to a captain, right? Like, I'm saying these things, but you're still the one that makes a decision on this. And then there are sometimes, depending on who I'm with, where I'm getting more closer to slave type of role, where, once again, no furniture privilege, no standing privilege, protocol and discipline is in a different particular way. So depending on who I'm with, like the guy that I'm talking to right now, like the role I think he's looking for, or at least it's starting to go that way, is more towards slave, or at least at that, like, playing with the line of it. So for me, I like to say submissive, because it kind of encapsulates all the roles within that, because I definitely don't see myself as a switch, and I definitely don't see myself as a dominant, at least of right now.
Okay. And you chose the title submissive over slave because
I feel like I feel like submissive encapsulates all of that, like boy, slave, like boy, slave, and then, because I kind of fluctuate depending on who I'm with. So I don't necessarily feel like, if there was anything, I would say I'm definitely a boy for sure, but I would not say I'm to the point of slave, but I can get down there to the role. But in my way, like, I will always kind of give my 2 cents. And I feel like, at least in my head, if I were to take a slave role, like, there's no opinion that I give that's not going to, that there's nothing I can do. Like, I would have to continually take it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, what advice would you give to someone who's Black or a person of color and has feelings of submission?
I would say, even though it's hard, I would say find some sort of representation. Really, I think that would be good. It's out there. It's small, but it's out there. And right now, I do think, at least within porn, like I'm starting to see a lot more black bottoms with white tops. I'm starting to see a lot more of that. Back now, like 5 years ago, you probably wouldn't have seen it. You probably wouldn't see like maybe one black person bottom. But like now I'm starting to see it where it's like it's a thing, like it's almost a trend. So find some sort of representation, find some sort of some outlet, find people that you trust once again, read a lot. I would say like find some books. The Jack Spinella books have been really, really great.
Oh, I love them. They're
Yeah,
so good.
they're really, really great. There's someone in our group by the name of Vince Andrews. He's a wisdom keeper within the NLA and INLA community. He wrote a book, The Complete Leather Boy Handbook. So that one's pretty good. Read up on the history. I think those are really, really good things to do. I wouldn't necessarily find a website. I will say right now, I don't really have a website that I can say like, you need to go here. Cause I feel like with the history given with the leather community, like there's so much about what is right and what is wrong, what should happen, what should not happen. I think those things right now, at least within the leather community, it's about what you particularly want from your experience. It's not necessarily what is the right thing to do, right? It's more about, this is who I am, this is what I like, and I'm going to go in this direction rather than like, these are the protocols and procedures of the whole entire group, right? As in the leather community as a whole, not in a particular group, but just as in a whole, right? So I would say, start reading, find representation, find a group. Onyx is really, really good with these things. Just in case you don't know, they are the Black Leathermen group. They're really, really awesome with that. And then you can always contact me. So I'm a really good tool and experience, and I'll try to help you in the best that you can. And once again, therapy helps. Therapy helps. And sometimes you just gotta bitch and complain to somebody. And if you have to pay them $150 just to bitch and complain, and for them to go, then it helps. Believe me, it helps. It helps.
And if I come back to finding representation, so is this also trying to find, other people from your ethnic minority? So let's say a person of color on recon or something as well that you can just talk to and
well. I'm really a component, because I work in tech. I'm really of a component of getting off your screen and getting off your phone and really meeting up with people. I think that's how real connections are made. I think the internet has been a tool to help us connect with other people, but I don't necessarily think it has helped us as in making deep connections. I think that we are physical beings and physical creatures that need to touch, see, and feel and do things, and actually have those experiences for ourselves. And that we cannot, you cannot just use the computer just all the time to communicate with people and have the experiences, which I think is great. But I really think that the growth is really communicating with people. So, find people that you're able to physically meet. If you can't do that, I think use the computer. Don't get me wrong. We're talking on some sort of Zoom platform right now, right? Like you're in Berlin and I'm in Atlanta. So, like there's something to it. But at the same time, I really do think that you need to meet people. And it doesn't necessarily have to be sexual. You don't necessarily have to meet with these people and have sex with them. You can just talk to them. And one thing that's really helped me a lot now that I think about it is start wearing leather to places where it is not expected. So if you want to go to the grocery store and you want to wear leather pants and a vest, wear leather pants and a vest. If you want to wear high cow and you want to go out to, the gay trendy bar, go and do it. Like really, really do it. Because I promise you, there's going to be someone in that bar. It may not be everyone, but it may just be one or two people, or maybe even just one. But that one person is going to look at you and go, hell yeah, I promise you that, no matter where you are. So, yeah, like get out, got to experience, got to do some things. And once again, do your research, and, find people that you can trust. I cannot tell you that it's going to be perfect, but I can tell you that it's going to be really great at the end once you find it.
So we're almost coming up to the end of the podcast. So these are some of the questions I normally ask most people. So what would you like to see in a master-slave community? Or what would you like to see more in the master-slave community or dominant-submissive community?
Oh, what I would love to see is I would love to have an event, and it doesn't have to be sexual, but I would love to have an event where protocol and procedure are in place, where there are certain rituals that are done between the two. We've talked about this, at least with some people here in Atlanta, about what that sort of experience like, given that we are no longer in old guard, right? We're probably past new guard. We're probably like the next guard. We're in the next guard, and I would love to see where you step into a room and there is protocol and procedure within place. People are doing sorts of, once again, ritual where they're on their knees. People may or may not have furniture privilege. Submissive and may not have furniture privilege. That is, I would love to see an event like that. I would love to see an event. I just don't think that there's anything right now within the community that has that sort of play, and I would love to have that play be illustrated within the community.
Lovely. It's strange. As I've been so ill recently, I'm doing lots of research on ritual. So stay tuned. Perhaps that's something I can help sort.
Yeah. I there was a movie. Well, of course, it's a porn movie, but there's one that's called Code of Conduct. It's one that's called Code of Conduct, and then there's another one that's called Masters and Slaves that have that sort of ritual. And it was just like, when I first saw it, I was like, yes, like this is it. Like, where is this? Like, where is this? Like, you come in, you get butt naked, and then like your master's friend comes over and you show him respect by kissing his feet. Like, where is that? Like, I don't, like, I could see it amongst the individuals, like in your own house, but there's not a particular event that I know that is like that. And even some of the bigger events, like let's say MAL or IML, where that is there, and I guess you could say honored. That sort of play and dynamic is honored, and I would love to have an event like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be sexual. It can just be that sort of play.
Thank you. And then a final question. So what makes a good master or dominant, and what makes a good slave or submissive?
I think a good master is someone that listens. And I would say someone that can be able to read a situation and understand, as much as you might be in headspace, that this has gone too far, or able to know that they're pushed the limits at that particular moment. There used to be a podcast I used to listen to a lot called No Safe Word Podcast. And their kind of motto was like, you should not use a safe word because you should have talked so much and communicated back so much that it doesn't need to be said, because you already know exactly what needs to be done and what can't be done, how to push the limits, how to read that person. I think at least the people that I've played with, particularly one where they had gone so close and I didn't say anything and I didn't give any hint, but in my head, I was getting ready to get to where I was like to say no more, where he read me right at that moment, and he knew, and he brought it back. Because at the end of the day, and I think his motto was like, you can't play with a broken toy.
Yes.
So what, like, if we go too far, you're not going to come back to me, or, you know, you're going to have an experience where you're going to go into a hole and you're not going to come back to this in a long ass time. So I think it's the best masters are the ones to read the whole situation, still be in headspace, but know when it's gone too far, or being able to push the boundaries just a little bit more because of the partners and the communication and the trust that they have in between each other. I think a good submissive is a person who is very eager, very knowledgeable, knows about protocol and procedure, knows its history. I think it's also not just about the sexual aspect of serving someone sexually, but I also think it's about keeping yourself up, having, I won't say a certain appearance, but being healthy. I'll put it in that sort of way, being healthy. Because once again, if you are sick, if you as a submissive are sick and can't take care of yourself, how can you take care of someone else as a submissive, right? So, being healthy, being knowledgeable, knowing about your history, and knowing about certain other plays like lighting a cigar, know how to light a cigar, how to cut a cigar. I also think certain like basic knowledge about how to boot black. And I think just being knowledgeable about the leather community in general really makes a really good submissive, and providing that service for your dominant. I really do think that makes what really good submissives.
So, Boi David, thank you so much for this. I hope other people will find it as informative as I have. And thank you for sharing so much.
No problem. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
If you'd like to be interviewed by me or know someone who would, you can get in touch with me at the email contact@masterslavelifestyle.com. You can now support the podcast, website and Master Slave community through Patreon membership, receive benefits such as early access to the podcast, exclusive video workshops and more, along with my thanks for supporting me. There is now a free download to help you take the next steps in the Master Slave lifestyle, suitable for both beginners and those who want a full-time relationship. Check out the show notes for more information on both. And if you're interested in finding out more on the 24/7 Total Power Exchange lifestyle, go to the website at masterslavelifestyle.com for more information. Thank you all for listening.